Since I'm here to talk today with a young Turk who's my podcast guest, let me tell you, when I look back at his career path, it just bowls me over. And no, I'm not exaggerating, neither am I blowing his trumpet. I first met him at the World Economic Forum in Davos many years ago when he was a rising star in the House of Tatas. He then moved on to Uber at a time when mobility and ride-hailing was in the middle of massive disruption. Then he became the big boss of Warner Brothers Discovery in South Asia, spearheading the region's operation, overseeing a wide portfolio of global brands and networks.
Do you often dream things that happen just as you dreamed them?
Yes.
Furiosa! We've come too far.
Ladies and gentlemen, start your engines.
As a child, my world was forever changed.
I want them back.
When my heart breaks.
You can go back to your regular life, or you can know the truth about the universe. The choice is now yours.
The first one, the high heel.
You have to want to know, okay? Do it again.
She can feel it. Something is coming. Something even they're afraid of.
Oh my God! Now I have seen everything.
He is still the big boss or the GM for the company, but I still think deep down he's actually a professional sportsman. Don't believe me? Well, just a few days back, he won the US Club's Best Golfer of the Year award. It's Friday, 19th of April, and Friday is the day when blockbusters used to get released. And we're here to talk cinema, content and commerce with Arjun Nohwar, our guest for this episode of our Corner Room Conversations with Business Leaders. From the Economic Times, I'm your host, Arijit Barman, and this is the Morning Brief Podcast. Arjun, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Arjun. That was quite the humbling introduction over there.
Deserve it. And, I want to kick off straight away into what's happening in your industry. And actually, a lot is happening. And some people would go to the extent of saying it's the era of generational disruption. Would you agree?
I think disruption is a constant. It's cyclical. And we find ourselves, especially in the M&E industry, in the midst of one of those cycles. And not just in India, but also globally. And a lot of this has to do with concentration of capital and the flight of some of that across different markets. We're seeing that with Disney, which is preferring to consolidate back in the US, and therefore very well-functioning assets like Star in India are being consolidated by the Reliance Viacom ecosystem. And then you see that across different OTT platforms, both regionally and locally in India as well. So we definitely seem to be in one of those consolidation cycles. And it's an exciting time because that presents a bevy of opportunities as well.
Correct. Now, Warner Brothers and Discovery have turned out to be far more resilient than what others thought when they actually merged way back in 2021. In 2021, the Netflix or the Disney, the Paramount corrections hadn't happened. All of them have gone through their fair bit of flux. We talked about Disney, we talked about some of the other consolidations that's happening around the world. The churn is still continuing. Yet, Warner Brothers Discovery, they are now sitting on a war chest of over $5 billion free cash flows, trailing 12 months, and you've retired $12 billion of debt over the last, 2 years. That's quite a powerhouse.
Yeah, I think the merger happened in 2022, April of 2022. Look, the company has definitely made significant ground in living out the vision that our leadership had charted once the two companies merged to form Warner Brothers Discovery, and delivering on that promise. And I think last year was another, significant milestone for us in generating about $41 billion of top line, about $10.2 billion of EBITDA, a very strong showing for the company that we are. And it doesn't come as a surprise considering the premium content that the company creates and the investments being made into partnerships and distribution channels so that more and more of our fans across the world are able to live and breathe and feel and consume that content.
Mm-hmm. You are a content company. That's the DNA of this mega media conglomerate. How do you balance the content side versus the balance sheet side?
I think it's instated, I guess, into the philosophy and the ethos of how high quality content is made responsibly. And when I mean responsibly, I mean while there is absolutely no costs that are spared in terms of having the highest production values that are out there for anything that's created, it's also created at cost that is equitable and merits the investment, right? I read this stat quite some time back. I don't know if it still is exactly the number, but it said that HBO probably, it was an interesting interpretation. It said that HBO spends about $56 million per Emmy, and the closest competitor, one of the other top streaming platforms, they spend close to $186 million per Emmy or so forth, so about 3x, right? And not to say that we're beholden to that number, but it was just basically saying that the return on every dollar of content is that much higher for us as a company. And that's the ethos and philosophy across the company. And how it permeates down, to every part of, the value chain across the company, even in the region. And we have a big cost focus when we are trying to look at what is the content that we're developing and what our fans would like to see. And then we're very careful in terms of going and commissioning that and doing whatever research and focus group studies that we need to before that. And once we have conviction, then we will go all out and produce. But we definitely have the focus on the bottom line as we go ahead and try to figure out how do we expand revenues.
Correct. I'll tell you to unpack the different verticals because you have quite a few businesses going parallelly in India. But I want to step back and go to that 2021-22 period when the deal happened. Doing a deal is easy or relatively easier. A merger is easier. Integration is the challenging part. How did you handle the Warner Brothers Discovery merger in India? Cultures differ, ethoses differ. The softer issues actually become the make or break. How did you handle all that?
I think you've hit the nail on the head when it comes to integration, successes or failures, right? It is the people who basically get a company successfully through a tenuous merger or not, right? I think when the two companies merged, there was a lot of transparency and openness on part of the top management in terms of calling out the fact that, look, these are areas where we need to be a little bit more patient with ourselves, but also spelling out very clearly that this is the direction in which the company wants to go. These are our priorities. So you're transparent in terms of defining and articulating your top level goals and priorities. And then you create a unifying cultural guiding principle and communication. There has to be a lot of transparency and communication. We clearly define what our OKRs were, what is our mission and vision. We try to co-create some of that. So there are multiple avenues by which you gain trust. Also you show your vulnerability as a leadership because you don't have all the answers.
So then unpack for our listeners the WBD or the Warner Brothers Discovery ecosystem in India, because as I said, I think you have 5 distinct lines of businesses.
That's right.
Correct?
Yeah.
So what are they?
The largest one that we have is our network operation. So we've got 19 different feeds or channels across the country, which is, so to give you an example, Discovery Channel, TLC, Animal Planet, Turbo, ID, Science. We've got Eurosport. We've got 3 kids channels: Cartoon Network, Pogo, Discovery Kids. We've got Eurosport, CNN, among others. That's the network operation. The second is our theatrical business. So we have Warner Brothers movies that we release in the market and distribute, as well as we are distributors to Universal Studios. And together we have the majority of India's Hollywood distribution market is under our charge. The third is our OTT business, which is, we've got Discovery Plus, which is our OTT platform in the country. Globally, we have Max, not yet in India, but that's our third line of business. The fourth is our TV distribution and licensing business, where we have a lot of HBO, Max Originals, and WB series that we license to a variety of different OTT as well as linear operators. And then the last is consumer products, where we've essentially got, mugs like this one, or posters, or shoes, or merchandise, where consumers can actually, experience our brands by buying into associated categories that have that IP on them.
Right. You said you have a portfolio of 19 channels. If I'm not mistaken, it started way back with Cartoon Network in 1995 when it was Turner. And worldwide, you have a bigger suite. Is there anything from that larger portfolio that is still not in India, but you would want to bring in the near term that you think has the potential, has the mojo in India? Personally, I was disappointed when you stopped HBO on linear TV.
Yeah. So look, we're all fans of HBO. I'm glad to hear that you are. I'm a big fan of everything that HBO does. The decision to stop a linear feed has many reasons to it. If you feel that our consumers, found them that they're consuming us more on OTT platforms, and we were concentrating on that to be the avenue of consumption for that particular genre of content, then that's a decision that the company took. And therefore it is now available across JioCinema currently. And also the content sits on several linear feeds as well of the company. In terms of getting some of our rich menus of our channels, of course, there's so many that would be really interesting to get to India. HGTV comes to mind, maybe Cartoonito as a pre-teen channel comes to mind. And we're evaluating them. So we constantly keep evaluating based on the signals that we are getting from our customers in market and the research that we're doing. And yeah, if we feel there's enough conviction, then then we get them across to the country.
Because pay TV in India has busted the global trend. The TV value chain is still showing resilience in India, right? I mean, there are still 100 million plus pay TV households out of the 180 million Indian households that have TV. Add to that, you have this unique free-to-air ecosystem in India. Many would argue that you ought to double down, into that universe.
You're very right. Look, when you say double down, we are a very core part of the pay TV ecosystem, and India is in many ways not immune to the shift that's happening or the erosion of the pay TV base and the migration of that towards an OTT or a digital consumption domain, right? However, in India, unique to a lot of other countries or the other part of the world, is in India you still have a lot of families that are buying television sets for the first time, and they're getting exposed to content on television by becoming pay TV or FTA consuming households. So you still have a groundswell of first time TV viewers, while you do have on the top end people who are cord cutting, some people who are never corders, but overall, therefore, pay TV is declining, but the decline is slower than the rest of the world. And then you, of course, have consumption of content happening through the burgeoning FTA base, as well as through connected TVs. So there's the ascendant connected TV ecosystem over there, and therefore, overall, the pay TV household number is hovering around the 175 million mark.
Where is the growth coming from, really? Is it on the connected TV or side, or the digital boxes, or like Fire Sticks, or the pay TV universe that continues to grow? Where do you see that the next phase of growth coming in this universe?
So, like I said, pay TV is about 100 million. Overall, we are at about TV consuming households, 175 million, right? FTA is growing, CTV is growing. These are the two.
But CTV is very small, so the growth will be from a very small base.
We have about 32 million CTVs in the country. And the great thing about India is you're small till you aren't, right? There's going to be a logarithmic scale jump in the number of households that are consuming connected TVs. It's just like the jump from 3G to 4G, right? There wasn't a linear trajectory, right? So, and because all these OEMs have their patch walls and then they have their fast content that is playing on them, you will have so much more consumption that is going to happen on CTV as the base on which TV consumption happens. You don't necessarily require a pay TV subscription or a FTA subscription. You could connect through a digital stream, whatever your CTV operator wants to curate and show to you. So essentially these are the two, I would say, buckets that are growing. So I think, like I said, pay TV will be resilient, continue to be resilient, but it'll be in slow systemic decline. FTA and CTV consumption growth is what will continue to fuel television consumption in India.
And you talked about the cord cutters. The world of OTTs clearly dominate most media conversations these days. HBO Max, as you said, it's not available in India yet, but it is available elsewhere and is, I think, one of the very few profitable streaming services. I think you and Netflix are the two profitable streaming services anywhere in the world. But in India, interestingly, you chose to have a license agreement with JioCinemas instead of launching the services. If I'm not mistaken, you were hired to launch HBO Max in India, and that's why I joined Warner. What changed?
I joined the company when I left Uber to join Warner Media at that time to launch Max in India. I think it was a fascinating opportunity, and I continue to be excited about all the rich progress that we are making with Max globally. You're right, we're in about 29 countries, and we just launched LATAM most recently, 29 or 39 countries. And we'll continue to expand our global footprint. I think we're launching in Europe very soon and then come to Southeast Asia by the end of the year. When the companies merged, the priorities also were, to your earlier question, the priority was on making sure that we have profitable growth. And therefore, I think the leadership relooked at the world map and said that what is the sequencing that we need to do in terms of launching Max in global markets, so that we not only do we provide access to this platform to our fans everywhere, but we do it in a profitable manner, right? Because there's also bandwidth of the engineering teams that have to work on this that has to be considered. So in that sequencing, we are currently following that plan, right? In that plan, as things stand, India's turn is yet to come, right? And it will be determined in the future. But in the meantime, we wanted to be sure that the hundreds of millions of Indians fans that are consuming our content get to consume that content on the platform that is most widely accessible, all right? And that, in our determination, we found JioCinema to be the ideal partner for us. And therefore, we made sure that we got into a partnership with them and our content is available on their platform to reach their 400 million plus customer base, should they choose to dial into it. And we couldn't be happier with that partnership.
It is a partnership which is clearly working, but it is a time-bound partnership. It is valid as of now till 2026. You can, of course, I'm sure, get into another round of agreement. But can we, as a viewer, expect post-2026 the launch of Max as an inevitable conclusion for India, for Indian viewers?
I don't think the inevitable is the right word, because we reserve the right to make that determination in the coming year and a half, and in consultation and discussions with the partner as well, right? So licensing arrangements by nature are time bound, and we will also be evaluating to see what is the right thesis for our India expansion, whether it is by launching Max, whether it's by partnering, whether it's by continuing to license. So we continue to evaluate all three options, and when we're able to share more publicly, we will do that. But rest assured that as a fan of our content, you and I will not fall short of avenues to consume all the fun shows that keep coming out.
As you said, I mean, obviously you will be evaluating all options, but what's going to be the tipping point, or what's going to be the key catalyst for you to take a call that, okay, this is the right time to launch? Is it the size of the market, which is still relatively small compared to other markets, or profitability, or something else?
There are several. It's not a binary answer. India is a low ARPU market. There's no surprises over there, and it's also a market where local consumption of content is critical for any platform to really succeed. That duality that exists over there, where you want to feed your platform with enough local content for it to be a local success, but at the same time you want to achieve scale. You want to also have a healthy balance sheet. So there's this little bit of I won't say a dichotomy, because they can go hand in hand, but those are, to your question, those are some of the factors that we continue to analyze to eventually come up with the India thesis. And when we feel we have conviction, then we will pull the trigger and hopefully launch over here. But we don't have any plans to do that as of now.
Max is an outlier like Netflix in terms of making money. You're a profitable streaming service. But if you are a loss-making streaming service, and most of them are, how do you value content? How do you value Succession, Game of Thrones, Beef, Sex and the City on a platform which is making loss?
I can't talk to how other platforms would view it, but if I were to rationalize some of the content spend decisions, it would be to create an identity. All right, so you want to be the home of the best that's out there, and therefore there is a premium imputed to that, and there's a certain kind of a customer that you attract. Second is you want to mitigate churn or customer turnover, and you want to create more stickiness and more watch time, increase the time spent viewing on your platform, and therefore having marquee content that always helps. And the third is, just making sure that there is a consistent, cadence to the drop of really fresh, high quality programming, because there's only so much programming that any local service provider can themselves deliver. And therefore you need continuous pipes from around the world of high quality content coming in and embellishing your portfolio that you can offer to your customers. So that's how I would look at it in terms of if I were evaluating any premium content licensing deals.
And one bucket of that content, or one stream of content, is sport. Now, globally, 3 of the largest media companies, that's WBD, Disney, and Fox, have announced plans to launch a joint streaming sports service with all of their sports properties available under one app. That's really, really mega. Of course, there is a lot of regulatory scrutiny around it, but that's another conversation. Your presence in sports in India is via Eurosports. But that's not what India predominantly watches as of date. But NBA is gaining ground. Golf is gaining ground. You're a golfer yourself. Why not launch that service also in India?
I think it has to do a lot with the nature of sport broadcasting in that country. So in the US, we believe that this is very advantageous to all 3 broadcasters and networks involved. And you've got a multitude of sports that get consumed over there, and there's a different ratio. In India, it's, we stand for the plurality of sport. We like to show multiple sports in India, and we took that decision for a reason. Majority of sport that's consumed in India, some people put it around 85% of what's on TV in terms of sports is cricket. And then you've got maybe another 10-12% that is watched, which is wrestling. And then you've got soccer, and then you've got all other sport. Cricket basically dwarfs the TV viewership of any other sport in India. So we took consciously a call to show, so we've got a little bit of cricket, but we show sports that have a very niche but very strong fan following. So we would show Tour de France in cycling, we would show MotoGP. We've reacquired the rights to MotoGP for another 3 years. In fact, this year we have the Bharat GP race in September in Delhi. We show, soccer, Frank Warren boxing, the Paralympics. Globally, we have the rights. Well, not globally, in certain markets to show the Olympics. Not in India, but this year, Eurosport has the rights for many markets to show the Olympics. So we invest a lot in, I would say, ATP 500 tennis, squash, badminton. So we show a lot. We shed the spotlight and on many sports in India that do have niche consumption, other than cricket. And that, I think, has been our mission, to grow the fan base and the consumer base of these sports by making them accessible to people, because viewing them on television and giving them the airtime and sunshine is important. And that's where we come in as a unique channel partner or a broadcast partner to these franchises and leagues.
Now, the other business, you are the biggest distributor of Hollywood movies in India. And Warner Brothers association with India, or Warner Brothers Movies Association with India, actually predates India's independence.
It's an amazing story. So I think around 1932 is when Warner Brothers came into the country to distribute its films. And I believe that we had taken a long-term lease from the Kambata family of the Eros Theatre.
Yes.
So that is where we used to have our releases. In fact, for many years, the offices of Warner Brothers were on top of the Eros Theatre. And then we had to kind of hand the lease back because of certain regulatory requirements. But yes, if you look at it, we're one of the few MNCs in the country that have a 90+ year history and legacy, and we're very proud of that.
What genres typically work? Because this is a big business, and as you said, it's a long association. You've seen what works in India, how consumer tastes are changing. You had Dune, which was a science fiction, one of my favorite science fiction books, which has been made into a movie, and what a movie it's been. But I may have been a minority, when you talk about big numbers, when it comes to loving a movie like Dune.
Yeah.
But on a larger genre-wise, what are the unique genres that work especially well in India?
I'll come to that question in a bit. In fact, you're not in a minority because, the numbers that we saw for Dune far exceeded our expectations. I think if you look at Warner Brothers theatrical in India, 2023 versus 2022, we saw a 100% increase in box office collections for us. And it's the highest ever Warner Brothers theatrical and distribution team in India has ever, recorded in terms of revenues. So it's been a seminal year for us. And that's thanks to, people coming back, in droves to theaters. And second, the amazing slate that Warner Brothers has released, as well as the distribution on behalf of Universal that we do. In terms of genres, to your question, India loves consuming monster flicks. So the Monsterverse has done phenomenally for us. Our latest release has been Kong vs. Godzilla. Okay. It is the highest grossing Warner Brothers release ever. So India loves monsters. Indian audiences love horror as a genre. So that was very surprising to us, but numbers don't lie. And we saw the numbers around Nun, The Exorcist. It's phenomenal in terms of the number of viewers that come and watch it. And remember, oftentimes the premium imputed to a ticket on a Dune versus some of the horror movies is differential, right? The horror movies don't have that premium, and still you see the box office receipts so high. It means that more number of people have come and watched it. So that was a surprise. And then the superhero genre, no surprises over there. And then I would say science fiction. So these are, 4 top genres of, movie consumption that we see. And then animation, you can't downplay animation at all. So, we distributed Kung Fu Panda 4 on behalf of, Universal, and it was the highest ever grossing animation release in the country ever.
And am I incorrect to assume that the growth in numbers is also due to the fact that many of these movies often get dubbed in regional languages. So you don't have to necessarily understand the nuances of English to go and enjoy a Kung Fu Panda or a Nun or even a Dune for that matter.
Very right. Yeah, in terms of, and that's part of our strategy to get more regional audiences to come into the theaters and consume it. Right. We usually end up dubbing movies in 3 to 4 to up to 9 languages in some cases, so that there is more number of, there's more distribution and it plays in more screens across the country. And, the conversation with the exhibitors also goes easier then. They get better primetime slots, they run for longer, and we have more consumers that become a fan of the franchise, so that they follow through into consuming that into OTT players, where it finds itself after the theatrical window expires, or if you have the next version of the franchise releasing, they'll become repeat consumers of that, and therefore it is completely in our interest to dub it in multiple languages.
Yeah. But on the other side, I mean, you talked about movie distribution. You exited movie production or the Hindi movie production quite early in India. The experience, some might argue, was checkered. Being, again, a content company, won't we see WBD making a comeback, especially now when regional content is becoming bigger and bigger? And it's not just Bollywood whose content is getting a global audience, even regional movies are getting global.
Very true. So the power of regional content cannot be overstated enough. When it comes to our decision into getting back into movie production in India, I can't comment on that right now. We continue to evaluate various opportunities and options that exist. Not to say that we are making or funding or producing anything at the moment, but we can't rule it out, for the near future either, because we are watching it very closely. The Indian diaspora is pretty strong across the world. So what we make consumed and travels across the world. And we see that even in the local non-fictional programming that we make in India for Discovery and Discovery Plus. The amount of consumption that happens on multiple platforms across the world, the diaspora as well as non-diaspora consumers, and some of that gets replicated into formats, across different markets. So we're not doing anything at the moment when it comes to creating local, Hindi or regional movies, but not to say that we won't look at it closely in the future.
Harry Potter Studios, the tour has been a phenomenal success. The latest, I think, you opened in Tokyo and it's been a runaway hit. So your theme parks are already in Asia, right? Isn't India got to be the next big market?
Oh, I would love for it to be in India. It'd be so great. I'm such a, fan of our franchises, complete Potterhead myself, love the DC universe and, Looney Tunes, everything that we grew up consuming. And the ultimate experience of our brands for a fan is when they go to a Warner Brothers World or a Harry Potter Studio tour. We are looking at it, it's a big investment commitment. And therefore, when we feel that the investment thesis merits us making that move, we will look at it. So no plans as of now, but the market analysis and assessment, has been going on for many years and continues to be looked at.
What's the highest selling merchandise for you in India? Batman, or is it Godzilla, Harry Potter, or is it Superman?
I would say the DC universe or Harry Potter universe. I would hazard a guess here because it's a DC universe that would trump, everything. But we've got a massive Harry Potter fan following as well. True. And we've got into some very exciting partnerships, notably one with Carrot Lane on them making really delicate, exquisite jewelry with, Harry Potter houses and emblems. And you've got, right from the Batman mug that I'm using right now to T-shirts and statues and figurines of the DC universe and of the Wizarding World. But and let's not forget Game of Thrones. Right from on beer and whiskey and down to smartwatches. We've got a huge fan following of that IP and franchise.
We keep talking about your balance sheet size and the numbers and the turnaround. Everyone expects this year WBD will attack growth in its key market, which is, of course, or the home market, as well as emerging high growth markets like India. Globally, there's been a lot of chatter around Paramount. There's been chatter about a merger with NBC Comcast. A lot of things are being speculated. India has had its share of consolidation in the sector as well. One, Sony and Z was almost there at the altar. It didn't happen. Disney and Reliance and Viacom, that marriage has indeed taken place. So will Arjun be a buyer in India for any linear or digital asset?
Like I said, we are in a cyclical consolidation phase right now. And India has seen its own fair share of mergers closing and some of them as near misses. When we look at the Indian landscape, we will look at opportunistic partnerships that would help us to profitably expand our presence in the market. And therefore, we look in all directions with a very open mind, but with very clear emphasis on profitable-led growth. Now, whether that means consolidation, acquisition, we look at multiple opportunities with that lens. But right now, I can't comment on any plans that the company might have, but it's certainly an exciting time to be a player in the Indian M&E ecosystem with all the moves that are happening by entrenched incumbents as well as the new players that are entering.
Is there enough scaled assets in the first place to even consider buying?
There are. You have a few nationally scaled media houses, and then you've got a bevy of locally very, very strong, operating companies. So you have both. It depends on what your goal and aspiration is, and what do you consider to be a complementary portfolio to your own asset base right now. So, but India has a lot of rich, a legacy of a lot of rich, high-performing media assets.
Running a business which is growing, and firing on all cylinders, and you said 5 very distinctive, high-growth verticals. When and how do you take time out in the middle of this grueling sked to play? And in a city which most golfers would argue, and that's been the eternal pet peeve, that there are no good courses in Mumbai. So how do you do that? So you have 26 hours in a day?
Well, a lot of my weekend time is, reserved for golf, but I manage to get usually 1 round a week or maximum 2. You have to give time and spend time with your family. I have a young daughter, and we try to do as much as I can. I always fall short of that mark, but try to make sure that I can give more time and attention there. But to answer your question, it's usually if you have a public holiday or, you'll play around over a weekend. Look, Bombay, compared to Delhi or other cities, does have a limitation on the number of courses because it's a much, concentrated surface area of, that's basically it, right? You're limited by land mass. But you've got a beautiful golf course in Chembur, the Bombay Presidency Golf Club. And I think it's a very fine establishment and a course. And then US Club, which is my home course right at the edge of Colaba. And then you've got Willie, and you've got, Kharghar, which is about an hour out. So you've got a few, fine golf courses in the country.
And you've already won the best golfer of the US Club. So kudos to you. Clearly, that's your favorite golf course in the city. But what's your favorite course in the world? Because I'm sure you've played elsewhere as well.
Oh, yeah. I think in the country, I would say the finest course that we have is the DLF Golf and Country Club in Delhi. It's one of the finest courses, not just in the country, but I would say even in the world. It's one of the toughest European tour courses as well. If you look at globally, I think St. Andrews, just for the majesty and the history and the legacy of that course. Pebble Beach for the same reason. And then you've got some tough as nail courses like Shinnecock Hills or, even Augusta for just the complete historical significance of that course. They are some of the best courses in the world. I'd love to be able to play these at some point in time. But the good thing with golf is I play several sports and I have competitively while growing up. But probably golf is the only sport where you're playing against the course, you're not playing against your opponent. So the skill level of the opponent doesn't really matter on how you enjoy it. And the second is the track or the course changes every time you go to a new one. In most of the sports like cricket or football or badminton or table tennis or basketball, you've got the same dimensions of the court, whether you're here or any part of the world, right? At most, your turf will change, the pitch will change in cricket or in soccer, it's like climatic changes. But in golf, you've got, like an F1 circuit, every golf course is unique. So you have to play the conditions, the lie, and you have to chart your own way across the course to try and conquer it.
Is gaming something that Warner Brothers Discovery serious about? Because I see not just big tech like Microsoft buying and getting into gaming in a big way. They bought Activision. Even the OTT platforms are, seriously adding gaming as a genre in their offerings. Is it something in consideration, or you're already doing that? Because you have the DC franchise or the DC, universe with you. A lot can be done just with DC itself.
Yeah, and we do, right? We released the Suicide Squad game a few months ago. Before that, we had Portkey Games presented the Hogwarts Legacy game, which I believe did more than $1 billion, for Warner Brothers gaming division. And it's a big part of a future growth of the company. And if you look at gaming as an industry, is huge. Another stat that I had read was Oscars caters to an industry that's about $10 billion, which is Hollywood. And gaming in the US is about $160 billion. So it's pretty remarkable that in the public eye, people don't realize how big gaming is. Yeah. Even in India, you've got more than 400 million gamers. Yeah. A lot of them also are consuming on their mobile phone, of course, not necessarily console gaming. But we do have a pretty strong presence in the console gaming ecosystem. Mm-hmm. And we obviously have, from Mortal Kombat to the DC universe to Harry Potter, Looney Tunes. Yeah. We've got several strong IPs that kind of reflect in the games that we release.
Arjun, it's truly an evolving sector, and things are changing literally by the second. Thank you so much for taking this time out and talking threadbare about your plans, Warner Brothers Discovery's, WBD's plans in India. Certainly, as fans, I would want theme parks. I would definitely want Max, and hopefully even something on sports. So maybe that's a tall order. But we've grown up on DC Comics. We've grown up on Game of Thrones, and sky's the limit, as they say. So thank you once again for talking to Economic Times and to the podcast. All the very best, and looking forward for more chats in the future.
Thank you, Arjun. Thank you for having me on.
You have been listening to the Corner Room Conversations with Arjun Nohwar about cinema, content, and commerce at a time of generational disruption on The Morning Brief. A big shout out for our production team. The show was produced by Surohini Jain and Vinay Joshi. Sound designed by Indranil Bhattacharjee and Rajesh Nayak. We appreciate you tuning in. If this episode left you inspired or entertained, don't keep it to yourself. Share the magic on your social media platforms. Until next time, stay curious and keep exploring with us. A new episode of the Morning Brief podcast drops every Tuesday, Thursdays, and Friday. But since you've been craving for more, we have been dropping an episode midweek on Wednesdays as well. The Morning Brief streams on Amazon Prime Music, JioSaavn, Spotify, Apple, and Google Podcasts. Basically, all your favorite streaming platforms. And of course, ET's own audio platform, ET Play. The montage you heard during the episode is a mashup of various Warner Brothers Discovery's movies. All clips used in this episode belong to their respective owners. Credits are mentioned in the description. Keep listening and have a great weekend. Till then, goodbye and good luck.